Hey guys, welcome to Redneck Off the Range. I know these videos are probably getting a little old, but I don't care. This one is one of the most exciting fishing adventures I think I've ever been on. And it wasn't because it was a very productive fishing adventure, but it's because the fish that I caught was a pretty cool fish in my opinion. So, I went out fishing yesterday to another new spot, and that was a spillway in a park where there's a lake, and then there's a spillway and it spills into a creek, which spills into another lake, and that lake over there eventually spills into the Missouri River. So I went back into this spillway and wasn't really sure what to expect, but right off the bat I caught a little bluegill. Um, and then right after I caught that bluegill, I noticed some gar, and I was kicking myself because I didn't bring my gar tackle box that I have set up, which I have some rope lures in. I pretty much brought everything else but that, and so I was really kicking myself. But I tried catching gar with Nightcrawler on the ultralight, and I actually got one to hook up pretty quickly, first try, but it got off before I could get it in, and that's just typical of gar. And I believe that first one was a short-nosed gar, a little bitty, tiny short-nosed gar. So I gave it another try, and I hooked up to another one, which was a pretty big one, I think. I hooked up to like 3 or 4 of them, but I tried with the ultralight, and that wasn't really working with just that little worm hook, which was really meant for sunfish and crappie and things like that. So I actually switched over to the Zebco Roam, and I put a treble hook on, and I put a couple of red worms on this treble hook, and I tried this. I kind of went back and forth between the two, and by the way, I somewhere in the middle there I did catch another bluegill with the ultralight. So by this time I had 2 bluegill, but I had like 3, 4, maybe even 5 gar on that I missed, and I was getting a little frustrated. And I tried my luck on the other side of the spillway. I crossed over to the other side of the spillway while I had a catfish rod out. I was just waiting for there to be like a big bite on that while I was on the other side of the creek. But anyway, I made it to the other side of the spillway, and there was a gar over there, and I took the treble hook with the red worms on it, and I threw it out, and lo and behold, it went after it, and I let it play with it for a while, because gar are kind of tricky. You gotta let them sit there and kind of play with the bait a while. I guess they gotta decide whether or not they're gonna eat it, or they're gonna throw it, like, just spit it out. But, after a minute of him just playing with it, then he started to take off, and that's when I set the hook, and I reeled that gar in, and it wasn't a very big gar. This was a short-nosed gar, but it was definitely well over a foot, probably like 15, 16 inches. I didn't really have anything to measure it with, but just based off of the pictures, I would say it's probably about 15 inches or so. But my very first short-nosed gar, my very first gar period that I ever landed, and to me that's very exciting. That's a new species. That's new species number 8 for the year, and in my opinion, out of all of those species, that one's probably the coolest, because the gar, all the different species of gar, they go back like hundreds of millions of years. I mean, they're freaking dinosaurs. Now, I know gar kind of get a bad rep, and that's because, well, one, they're tricky to catch. People call them trash fish or rough fish or whatever. They just think that they're trash, they're garbage. You shouldn't waste your time with them. I personally think that all these fish that people call trash fish are actually some of the more exciting fish to catch. I know they're not a bass, because everybody's all about the bass, the largemouth bass, the smallmouth bass. And don't get me wrong, I like catching bass. Catching bass is really, really fun. But sometimes I like to catch other things, and a gar it's definitely a challenge. Sometimes I really like a challenge, and they're just really cool fish. You got to watch out for those teeth, but they're really cool fish, really fun to reel in, and they get pretty big. Especially the long nose gar and the alligator gar, which we do have alligator gar around here. They're just not super common, mainly on like the big rivers and stuff. But this place that I was fishing was full of short nose gar, possibly even long nose gar, maybe even spotted gar. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell, especially if you're pretty new to this. But you know, a lot of people, they bow fish for gar, and that basically you're going to kill everything that you catch. I threw it back. So I'm mainly a catch and release kind of guy. But a lot of people, like, they bow fish for them, or if they catch them, they just throw them on the bank because they don't like them, which, by the way, is illegal in Missouri. And so anyway, you know, people consider them trash fish. You know, if you catch them, just throw it on the bank, let it die. Who cares? It's not a bass. It's not a catfish. It's not a crappie. Whatever. It's not a sport fish. It's not, you know, it's not a loved fish like a sport fish. And I think that's very unfortunate. I think that fish like gar and bowfin and buffalo, all these other fish that people are like bow fishing for and just, you know, throwing on the bank and letting them die because they don't like them. You know, it's just a shame. I really think those are some really cool fish to catch. And yeah, they're harder fish to catch than the sport fish, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to have a good challenge, and they put up a really good fight. So, and yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. First short nose gar ever. I really want to catch more gar, whether it's a short nose or another species like a long nose or a spotted. I think that'd be really cool, and then I'm just really excited about the fact that I actually caught one, and I'm looking to do it again. I'm gonna go back to that spot again, a little more prepared next time, and just see what I can catch. Maybe even bring the camera out. I've been a little reluctant to actually take the camera out on these fishing trips because the last time I tried filming, I actually dropped the camera and I kind of somewhat broke it. It still works, but it's the screen is a little messed up. So I might take the camera into a shop to get fixed, and then I might take the camera out on actual fishing adventures, or I might just get myself another cheaper, smaller camera that I'm not quite as worried about messing up, maybe a little more durable. And then maybe I'll take that on my fishing adventures, so I can actually show these fishing trips and actually show you guys what I'm doing and what I'm using and everything else. So anyway, that's new species number 8, short nose gar. Again, not a very big one, but definitely I think the coolest catch of the year. And this just gets me even more excited to do even more fishing this year and try for other species, whether that's gar, whether that's flathead catfish, whether that's bigmouth buffalo, smallmouth buffalo, carp. Well, I guess I've already caught a carp, but more carp, bigger carp maybe. Yeah, so definitely looking forward to that for the rest of the year. So subscribe to my channel, and until next time, be safe.